Hi, this is Richard Boyd, your BDG insider. I'm here today with John Giamalvo, the Vice President of Dealer Services for Equifax. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
I guess first off, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about Equifax? Not that people haven't heard of them before.
Sure. Well, as you mentioned, I'm Vice President of Dealer Services for Equifax. Equifax is obviously one of the three major credit bureaus, and we facilitate automotive financing, usually through our wholesale lines and folks that we deliver products through. We do have a practice of delivering direct to dealers, but overwhelmingly we deliver credit reports so they can manage risk in their loans, and mostly to the lenders, but also to the dealers, so the dealers have an inkling as to who they should send an application to.
How do you guys get to that process? Can you tell me a little bit about how you guys get actually all the data, how that process works? You were talking about the wholesale operation versus direct to the dealer. Can you tell me how that works a little bit?
Sure. Well, the files are populated by lenders and contributors to the consumer credit file. Then the consumer credit files that we have in-house, they're called upon for particular use cases by authorized dealers directly, where they can, if they don't have access to one of the larger resellers like a CDK or a CoreLogic or some of those folks, and have to come directly to us, we have a platform to facilitate those dealers, and so they're able to consume credit reports. But overwhelmingly, dealers will come to a 700 Credit and National Credit Center and those folks, and they'll consume directly through those folks. And they'll be able to access our files from there.
Now, the next question I have for you is, we were speaking off air earlier, and you've been in the automotive industry for a while. What would you say in the last 5 to 10 years has been some of the biggest changes that you've seen in the automotive industry?
Well, if you go back as far as 10 years, obviously the economic downturn, there was a whole host of changes that went on in the business, mostly from the traditional model that was out there and running hot and everybody was happy. I mean, most of the, or better part of the disruption from the internet was kind of eaten up at that point. But when the economic downturn happened, and particularly looking at that from a finance perspective, it decimated subprime. So you had a lot, and it also decimated leasing. So you had the notion of those two items, very big portions of the business, subprime and the leasing practice of new cars. Those folks, getting back into leasing took a little while. The subprime markets reopening up took a little while for folks to take the risks to get back in the subprime market. And also, if you think back as far as those days, I know you guys go back that far, you think back to cash for clunkers. So that was incredibly disruptive and incredibly, doubly disruptive to the subprime market, because a lot of those were the subprime vehicles. So you had an inventory glut that came out here. You had leasing go down, and so the off-lease vehicles were not coming back in to replenish inventories. So it's a little bit of a double whammy. So I think just for the business overall, 2008 was a very disruptive, a change agent year, if you will. Looking more to today, there's another whole host of change that's going on in the business. I think a lot of it, most of it even maybe you could say being facilitated by the mobile devices.
You got to my next question. I was going to ask you, what was one of the, where do you see the industry going in the next year, 5 years, 10 years? Now, I know that you wrote a paper or an article that I read of yours. It was said, how mobile marketing advancements influence the car buying process.
Can I reference that for this? No.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love you to, because the information that was in that article really does, I think, speak about where everything's going to go for in the future. So if you don't mind, give me your opinion on where you think things are going to be going with marketing in the automotive industry, and how that's going to affect Equifax, on how you guys are going to be able to get information to the dealers or to consumers themselves, or where you see it going.
Well, you've touched on in your question a lot of the areas that Equifax is trying to get their arms around, because you have, again, I say mobile devices because mobile devices And some of the products and services that an Equifax is capable of putting in to the process has allowed and facilitated for very quick transactions, as opposed to a long form and paper-laden transaction and access to money. You can now be able to get some of these fractional ownerships or subscription-based ownership for a car, short-term leases. Those can all be facilitated all digitally through a mobile device where we're capable of running all the fraud protection and being able to provide the consumer credit data, maybe even some propensity for those folks who are interested to see if they might really be interested in that. We've got data assets that can also supply income and employment data to it. So you've got the phone in your hand, maybe what would have been 50 pages of papers on a dealer's desk at one point, and that's allowed these folks to come in and venture capital to come in with these new models to take a piece of the pie and kind of change the consumer's outlook. Where we're challenged, and I think we're doing a good job about it. Prior to us going on air, you talked a little bit about alternative data, and that data is what these new risk models need. It has to be delivered quickly. Fortunately for Equifax, they've made investments in recent years to have an almost dynamic credit file, which includes a lot of alternative data that some of these risk models call on, and we've made it configurable. And it's also, we're capable of delivering in a real-time environment, which is needed to facilitate these kind of transactions. So I think that's incredibly big. It affects really all aspects of the market, from new cars. Leasing is, again, going at breakneck speeds again, so the replenishment of used car inventory is there again. Again, I can go on, but it's changed quite a bit. And you've got certified pre-owned now is you used to think of certified pre-owned, you thought of BMW and Lexus.
Yeah.
And now it goes across, across the board. So there's a lot of change going there, but most importantly, I think, as you mentioned, mobile facilitated purchase options that were not available before.
Now, touching back on something talking about the recession and what happened in 2008 and going back, how much would you say that Equifax has used the alternative data to, like you said, make a dynamic credit score or credit file to where you'll look at all these different things? Do you think that that's more so having to do with, if you had to say, would you think that that's more based off of what happened in 2008 and trying to prevent it from the future? Or would you say that that's more of the technology basis around that allows you to configure things like you might not have been able to configure?
Yeah, I think of it this way, and maybe this sound like a kind of a goofy analogy, but I think a lot of people look at it two ways. I look at it two ways too. We want to be careful from the history of what happened back in '08. So we do want to see the canary in the coal mine, but we also want to see the canary in the gold mine. So there's opportunity where there is risk. So if we're capable of configuring models for some of these new subscription-based, pricing and fractional ownership and the Ubers of the world and everything that's coming in, we're capable of configuring models specifically for them, and they may or may not include a lot of the alternative data. So we fortunately can do that. It's a pretty broad landscape though right now, with a lot of these different ideas that are coming in, and a lot of them that are coming out from the OEMs themselves with the subscription models, and which is very interesting.
Yeah, it's I guess interesting to hear you bring that up, because I didn't even think about the aspect of when people are doing the subscription models. You're getting an Uber, you're going to Nissan, and they're giving you a semi pre-approval based if you're using this and how they're doing that. Is Equifax working with any OEM companies to specifically tailor what they're looking for the people? Like, so I know General Motors and Nissan have it where you can go through them to get the cars almost directly.
Well, that is another an area that I think it remains to be seen how that's going to play out, because there certainly some of those models I think are causing a little bit of a disruption and a little bit of a challenge to the franchise model. And, obviously Tesla and whether they were going to go in franchise. So I think that remains to be seen how that all plays out. It seems now that the inventory will still be powered, if you will, or supplied by franchise dealer inventory on a local basis for where that customer resides. So we haven't seen it where anybody's up in arms about it just yet. But again, remains to be seen how this all kind of plays out.
Whether it's just a minor disruption or whether it's actual big disruption and
Yeah,
can actually make people change.
I think also the other side of it from the manufacturer's standpoint is how do these different models of ownership affect their residual values, which is incredibly important to the manufacturers because they still want those 199 deals going out there on the leases. So I think there's a lot of unknown in the data. The good thing from the Equifax perspective is that we see and analyze these things as they come in and are capable of looking at forecasting and propensity models and provide it to marketing type companies to say, okay, where, from a market standpoint, from a consumer behavior standpoint, where's the real propensity for these models to work?
Well, it sounds like Equifax is definitely on top of their game, and as far as what they're doing now, what they're going to be doing towards the future, it seems like they've got a good grasp on it. So unless there's anything else you had, it's been a pleasure having you today, and I look forward to hearing what new things Equifax is going to be coming out with next.
Anytime. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too.